mother is completely crazy because she wants to keep my baby to trap her ex-boyfriend. But I'm going to reveal her Machiavellian plan to help him dodge the nuclear bomb that is my mom. I don't know where to begin, but I need to vent and get some advice. To give you some context, I'm 21 years old and 7 months pregnant. This pregnancy has been anything but easy, which is why I had to temporarily drop out of college. I was actually in my 3rd year when I found out I was pregnant, and at first I tried to keep going with my studies. But as my belly grew and the pregnancy complications became more apparent, I had to accept that I couldn't do it all anymore. The nausea, constant exhaustion, and pain made it impossible for me to concentrate in class and attend regularly. I decided to move back in with my mother so she could help me during this time, as living alone in my small apartment was no longer an option, especially after my boyfriend, the father of my child, disappeared from the face of the earth. But I'll get to that part in a bit. My parents separated when I was just 4 years old, and my dad remarried and started another family in a different city. To be fair, he never completely disappeared from my life, but he wasn't very present either. He used to visit me occasionally or call me for the holidays and important birthdays, but that was about it. As I grew older, we drifted apart even more, as his focus was on his new wife and their kids, my half-siblings. Now that I'm pregnant and need more support, it's not like I can count on him. I never had a close relationship with my dad, and even though he and his new family live just a few hours away by car, I don't feel like I can turn to him for this. So here I am living with my mom. First, it seemed like a good idea. I needed a place to stay, and she was willing to help me with daily chores like cooking and cleaning since I barely have the energy. But lately, everything has gotten more complicated. Let me tell you what's been happening. I was in a 2-year relationship with a guy I really loved. When we found out I was pregnant, the surprise was huge, but at first he was fully on board. We talked about how we were going to be a family, move in together, and he even mentioned the possibility of getting married someday. Up until the 4th month of pregnancy, everything seemed to be going smoothly. Sure, there were moments of tension, and it wasn't easy to accept that we were going to be parents at such a young age, but he reassured me that everything would be fine. Then all of a sudden he started pulling away. He became distant, started going out more with his friends, and avoided conversations about the baby. At first I thought maybe he was nervous or stressed, which would be understandable, but then he started making ridiculous excuses. Eventually, he told me he wasn't ready to be a father, that he needed space to figure himself out, and the best part, that he didn't want to lose his freedom. As if we hadn't discussed this before, as if he hadn't promised me we were going to be a family. He told me he couldn't commit to this life, and just like that, he disappeared. He stopped answering my messages or calls, and the worst part is I see him on social media living his life as if nothing happened. It was devastating, I'm not going to lie. I never thought I'd be one of those stories where the partner just bails when things get tough, but here I am, alone in all this. Personally, I've always wanted to be a mother, but if he had told me from the start that he didn't want to be a father, we would have taken a different path. I don't know which one because we never discussed it, but I wouldn't have forced him to be a father. He was as excited, if not more, than I was. But after being pregnant for 4 months and accepting that I was going to be a mom, it's not as simple as giving the baby up for adoption. Now comes the really strange and troubling part of this whole situation. As I mentioned earlier, my mother has been helping me a lot during this pregnancy. However, she has some pretty peculiar ideas. Recently, she dropped a bombshell on me that left me completely baffled. You see, before I moved in with her, my mother was in a relationship with a man she really loved. According to her, he was the love of her life. But their relationship ended because he moved to another city for work. And although they tried long distance, eventually things cooled off, and they broke up. Apparently, this man never had children, and according to my mother, he always expressed his desire to be a father. So what was my mother's brilliant idea? She suggested that when my baby is born, she would take him and tell her ex that it's his child. My mother basically wants to lie to her ex-boyfriend and make him believe that he had a baby with her to trap him and win him back. She says this would be the perfect way to have a family with him, and that he's always wanted a child so it would make him happy. I was stunned. Seriously, I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I immediately told her that there was no way I was giving up my child for adoption, let alone letting her use him in her absurd plan to trap her ex. This is my baby. I'm ready to be a mother. I know it won't be easy, but I'm not willing to give him up for any reason, especially not for a lie like this. Besides, the idea of my child growing up thinking that my mother is his mother, and that his father is someone who isn't even aware of the truth is just sickening. But the most concerning thing is that my mother doesn't seem to see how absurd this is. In her mind, this is the perfect solution for everyone. It would help me avoid the burden of being a single mother at such a young age, and it would give her ex what he's always wanted: a child. Unfortunately, I shouldn't be that surprised that my mother thinks this way. This isn't the first time she's had completely out-of-place ideas. When I was 17 and she was 36, it was a Wednesday or Thursday, and I had school the next day. But my mother came up with the idea that we should go to a bar to pick up men as if we were friends. Even at the time I found it disturbing, but now when I think about it, it seems even more disgusting. The idea of her using me to attract men who could be my father repulses me, and no mother should ask something like that of her daughter. I was underage and shouldn't have been in a bar. Another situation I remember was when I was 13. I recall she was dating a man who couldn't stand me. Every time he came over, he would either ignore me or make disparaging comments like, "Kids these days don't know how to respect their elders." He was a controlling and rather selfish guy. Well, on one occasion, my mother had promised we'd spend the day together because we had been distant, and I really needed some time with her. But when her boyfriend called out of the blue to say he wanted to take her out to dinner, she canceled our plans in the blink of an eye. The worst part was that when I tried to tell her how much it hurt me that she always prioritized her boyfriends over me, she told me I should understand because he was her happiness and I was too young to comprehend what real love was. I'm not sure if it was during that time, but since then, I've always harbored some resentment toward how my mother puts men above me, her own daughter. Back to the present. I've already told her that I'm not going to do what she's asking, that I won't give up my child, but she keeps insisting. Sometimes she ignores me and continues talking about how perfect everything will be once her ex sees the baby. I don't know how else I can make her understand that this idea is completely irrational and selfish. And the worst part is that it's not like I can just cut her out of my life because I live in her house. I have nowhere else to go. My friends live in their university dorms, and I don't have the means to rent a place on my own right now. I feel trapped between a rock and a hard place. I want my child, I want to be a good mother to him, and I want to eventually get my life back on track, finish college, and move forward. But the situation with my mother is becoming increasingly toxic, and I don't know what to do. I feel completely alone in all of this. Right now, I'm a little scared to be living with my mother, but I don't have any relatives to. Update 1. It's been 3 months since my last post, and honestly, I can't believe how much my life has changed in such a short time. First of all, I want to share that I've given birth to my baby, and he's healthy and growing well. In the end, that's what matters most to me. When I see him, hold him, everything else fades away. Even the chaos I'm still caught up in with my mother. But now comes the tricky part. Even though several weeks have passed since my baby was born, my mother hasn't stopped insisting that I give him to her. She's still stuck on this absurd idea of giving the baby to her ex-boyfriend, making him believe it's his, and trapping him in a relationship. Every time she brings it up, I feel like screaming. It's as if she's not listening to or respecting my decisions. This is my baby, and the last thing I want is to be separated from him, especially under such sickening circumstances. My mother still believes she's doing what's best for me. She's even gone so far as to say she's thinking about my future, and that with a baby out of the picture I could go back to school, have a career, and live a life without the complications of being a young mother. According to her, her ex would be the perfect person to raise the baby and provide a stable family. To me, this is all pure insanity. No matter how many times I tell her I'm not giving up my baby, she keeps pushing. Yes, she's been helping me care for the baby, but at the same time I feel like she's only doing it because she has her own hidden agenda. I've reached the point where I don't leave her alone with him out of fear of what she might try. Sometimes I catch her looking at him in a way that makes me uneasy, as if she's planning something. It's a horrible feeling because she's my mother, the person I'm supposed to trust, but I can't shake the feeling that she's scheming. However, I do have some new, more positive news. In the midst of all this, I've finally found a glimmer of hope. One of my friends from college, who recently started working, managed to rent a small apartment and is living on her own. A couple of weeks ago, I talked to her about my situation, and to my relief, she said it wouldn't be a problem for me to stay with her for a while until I can get back on my feet. Honestly, that conversation felt like a lifeline. Since my boyfriend disappeared, I haven't had many people to turn to, and knowing I can count on my friend has given me the strength I needed to plan my escape from here. My plan is simple though difficult to execute. I'm planning to move in the next few days, taking advantage of the fact that my friend will be traveling to my city to help me with the move. I don't want to tell my mother anything until I'm already out. In fact, I prefer she doesn't find out until I'm far away. For several reasons, but mostly because I don't trust what she might do if she finds out I'm leaving. My mother has shown that she can be very persistent when she gets something in her head, and this obsession with her ex and the idea of the baby is no different. My biggest fear is that if she finds out I'm leaving, she might try to stop me somehow. I don't know how far she'd be willing to go, but I've learned not to underestimate her. That's why I want to carry out this plan as quietly as possible. I've been using the times when my mother is at work to start packing my things little by little. My friend has a car, but it's not very big, so I can't take everything at once. I'm prioritizing the most important things: the baby's clothes, toys, diapers, bottles, the basics for his care, and some of my essential belongings. Everything else will stay here, at least for now. The only thing I need is to be far enough away by the time my mother realizes I'm gone. I know what I'm about to say might sound risky, but I feel it's the right thing to do. Once I've moved out and I'm far from here, I plan to contact my mother's ex and tell him everything. I don't even know his name. I only have a few vague clues my mother has mentioned in passing, but I've decided to spend these last few days here trying to learn more about him. My mother has some old photos of them together, and I think I've overheard his name once, so I'll try to use whatever I can to find him on social media or dig up more information. I'm not doing this out of revenge, but because I believe he has a right to know what my mother is planning. If she's willing to lie to him about something as important as a baby, I think it's only fair that he knows what he's dealing with in case my mother tries anything else, especially if she loses her main plan, my baby. I also don't want to risk her contacting him in the future and dragging him into this lie, involving my child in the process. I have many doubts about how I'll handle this conversation with him. I have no idea how he'll react or if he'll even believe what I'm telling him, but at least if I get to talk to him, I'll have peace of mind knowing I did what I could to stop this madness before it spirals even further. I'm also planning to record at least one conversation with my mother where she asks for my baby, just to have evidence. As for the move, my friend will be in town in a week. We've already planned the details. She'll be here on the day my mother works late, so we'll use those hours to load everything into her car and get out of here without raising any suspicion. I know it sounds like I'm running away, and in a way I am. I don't want to confront my mother right now. I don't want to hear more of her twisted arguments or have to defend, once again, my right to raise my own child. The plan is to move as quickly as possible, settle into my friend's place, and from there, organize myself to start looking for a job and get back to my studies when possible. I know it won't be easy, but I'll be in a safe environment, away from my mother's pressure. Most importantly, I'll be able to focus on what truly matters: taking care of my baby and starting to build a future for the two of us. I'm nervous, I won't lie. Doing this in secret fills me with anxiety, but I don't see another way to do it without risking my mother interfering. I also feel a bit guilty for leaving this way, without telling her face to face, but my priority right now is protecting my child and making sure he's not used as a pawn in my mother's twisted game. I'm afraid of what might happen when my mother finds out I'm gone. I don't know if she'll try to find me or if she'll just give up. One way or another, I'm ready for whatever comes, because now I'm not just thinking about myself. I'm thinking about my son's future. Sometimes I wonder how I got to this point, where the person who should be my support has become someone I need to escape from. But this is how things are, and the only thing I can do now is move forward and protect what matters most to me. Anyway, this week will be crucial, and I hope I can move without complications. I'll keep you updated on how things go. Update 2. Several weeks have passed since I moved out, and honestly, things have gone pretty well, at least at first. Moving day was a bigger success than I expected, which surprised me considering how tense I was about executing the plan without my mother noticing. My friend, as I mentioned, came from her city to help me. She arrived about 2 hours after my mother left for work, giving us the perfect window to get everything done calmly, but with the constant nervousness that something might go wrong. We managed to load up all my things and the essentials for the baby: diapers, clothes, his portable crib, and a few other necessities. I left a lot behind, but at that moment the priority was getting out with the basics. As we were loading the boxes and bags into the car, I couldn't help but keep checking the window every couple of minutes, as if somehow my mother would appear out of nowhere and stop everything. But luckily that didn't happen. We loaded up as much as we could, and when we finally closed the trunk, I felt a mix of relief and fear. I knew that even though I was physically leaving the situation, the real drama wouldn't end there. After leaving the house, it took me a few days to settle in with my friend, who has been an absolute angel through all of this. She gave me her couch and a small space for the baby. It's not much, but it's enough to feel safe and, most importantly, free from the constant pressure of my mother, at least for now. Finding my mother's ex's name, which I thought would be a huge challenge, turned out to be easier than expected, and the story behind how I got it is kind of ridiculous. I had been going through some old photos of my mother that I had in her room before moving, looking for any clues. I found an old box with letters she kept from when they were dating. I felt like a spy at that moment, but the funny part is that one of the letters wasn't as romantic as I expected. It was more of a brief note, but what made me laugh was how it was signed, with his full name first and last. I couldn't help but burst out laughing. Who signs a love letter like they're signing a check or contract? But anyway, thanks to that, I finally had his name. After that, it wasn't hard to look him up on social media. Once I was fully settled, I decided it was time to contact him. I wasn't sure how he would react, but I felt it was the right thing to do. After all, he deserved to know what my mother was planning. I found him on Facebook, and to my surprise, he had a pretty public profile, so it wasn't hard to send him a message. I tried to be as clear and direct as possible. I explained who I was, his ex-girlfriend's daughter, and told him what my mother was trying to do with my baby. As you can imagine, his reaction was total shock. At first, he couldn't believe it and thought maybe it was some kind of misunderstanding, but then to make sure he understood the seriousness of the situation, I sent him an audio recording I had made. Luckily, before I left, my mother had once again insisted that I give her the baby to hand over to her ex, while I tried to keep calm and not lose my temper. When her ex heard the audio, everything changed. He replied saying that he always knew my mother was a little crazy. His words, not mine, but he never imagined she would take it to this level. He was as shocked as I was when my mother first made the proposal. He thanked me for telling him the truth, and although he said that if my mother had gone through with the plan, he would have asked for a paternity test, it was still good to know what was going on. He also mentioned that, even though their relationship had ended months ago, she still writes to him from time to time, and he hadn't had the heart to block her, maybe out of nostalgia or because he didn't want to hurt her feelings. But after all this, he said he has no doubts anymore. Now, knowing the true extent of my mother's craziness, he plans to block her for good and cut all contact. Honestly, I understand. Sometimes, as crazy as certain ideas might seem, we don't process them fully until someone shows them to us from a different perspective. In this case, the audio was enough for him to see the reality of the situation. As for my mother, after I moved, she started calling and texting me constantly. I waited a few days and finally responded. I sent her a message telling her that I left because she was completely insane for asking me to give her my baby, and that I wanted nothing to do with her twisted plan. After that, I blocked her. Since then, it's been a relief not to receive any more messages or calls from her. However, there's a part of me that's afraid she might eventually figure out that I told her ex everything. If she ever finds out that he knows about what she was trying to do, I don't know how she would react, and honestly, I don't want to find out. I'm not in the mood for more drama. I've had enough already. Update 3. It's been a year since my last update, and honestly, this feels like a strange one to write, but in the best way possible. The truth is, since everything blew up with my mother and I decided to cut all contact, my life has changed more than I ever imagined. I haven't heard a single thing from her in all this time, and I'm genuinely happy about that. I don't want someone like her in my life unless it's absolutely necessary. And to be honest, I don't see that changing anytime soon. I feel so much more at peace without her presence, without her constant manipulation, and especially without having to deal with her madness. Now, the most important thing, my baby. He's no longer the newborn I held in my arms, terrified of our future when I ran away that day. He's grown so much over this past year, and watching him take his first steps and say his first words has been the most incredible experience I've ever had. It's amazing how quickly time passes. Having him by my side, seeing him smile and explore the world every day, has given me the strength to keep going, even in moments when I doubted myself. One of the best pieces of news is that I finally found a job. It's nothing glamorous, but it's stable and helps me afford a place to live with my son, as well as a babysitter. The apartment we live in isn't fancy, not by a long shot, but it's ours. Just knowing that I don't depend on anyone else, that I'm able to support myself and provide a safe home for my child, fills me with pride. I love coming home after work, hugging him, and knowing that I'm building something for the two of us. Of course, money is tight. Between rent, the baby's needs, the babysitter, and other bills, there are months when I barely make it to the end. But that's part of life, right? Sometimes things are tough, but I've learned to live with what I have without complaining too much. It's not a life of luxury, but it's enough for the two of us, and that's what matters. Aside from work, I've also gone back to my studies. It's something I've always wanted to do, but after everything that happened, it felt impossible. However, little by little, I managed to re-enroll in university classes. It's not easy juggling everything, being a mom, working, and studying, but I know it's the path to offering my son a better future. Every class I take is a step closer to finishing my degree, and every step reminds me why I'm doing all of this. Honestly, I'm at a point in my life where, even though things aren't perfect, I feel much stronger and more confident than before. I've learned to trust myself, make tough decisions, and face challenges with my head held high. This past year has been a roller coaster, but it has shown me that I'm capable of more than I ever thought. And most importantly, it's taught me that the stability and peace I've been seeking can only be found by letting go of what doesn't serve me. So while this journey has been hard, I'm grateful for where I am now. My son is my greatest motivation, and I know that if I keep working hard and studying, we'll have the future we dream of. Sometimes life takes you down unexpected paths, but even in the darkest moments, there's light at the end of the tunnel. In short, this is a positive update. I don't have any drama to share this time, just good news. I'm at peace, I'm building my life, and most importantly, I'm happy. Thank you to everyone who has supported me along the way. It means more than you can imagine. Even though we're strangers and maybe on opposite sides of the world, we can still connect and help each other.